Welcome to New Hampshire Motor Speedway. Although officially fall is still a few days away, there is already a bit of a chill in the air, which makes it perfect timing to turn up the heat and kick off the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup. Now, if history is any indicator, this is the car and driver to beat as Jimmie Johnson launches his bid for an unprecedented fourth consecutive Cup title.
This ain't no rodeo, no dog and pony show, ain't no roller coaster ride, ain't no highway, sure ain't no river, baby. It's just my so-called, just my championship ride.
The championship ride begins, and here are how the 12 car drivers in the chase are seated. Just 40 points separate top seed Mark Martin from the bottom four who have yet to win this year. Carl Edwards, Ryan Newman, Juan Pablo Montoya, and Greg Biffle. Now look at the driver in 11th spot. Important to note Montoya because yesterday in qualifying, he fired the first volley in this year's championship battle. The Chase rookie picked up his second pole of the year and shattered the old track record here previously held by Ryan Newman. Montoya's mission this year was simply to make the chase, but now that he's in it, he is focused on a NASCAR championship. Here's Jamie Little.
Well, Doc, for the first time in the last few years, Jimmie Johnson isn't the clear-cut favorite. As a matter of fact, there really isn't a favorite as we kick off the chase here in New Hampshire. Now, there's two guys looking to make a big impact. They're the two underdogs, Brian Vickers and Juan Pablo Montoya. Now, Juan Pablo has looked like anything but an underdog this week, and of course, capturing the pole yesterday, he has dominated the other two practice sessions. That has set a buzz throughout the garage here. Everybody else trying to knock that 42 team down, and they only have one opportunity left, and that is right now, 1 hour that we call happy hour. Doc?
Thank you, Jamie. Montoya has been the man thus far here this weekend. Hello, everyone. Along with Dale Jarrett and Andy Petrie, I'm Jerry Punch. Glad to have you with us here on what is a crisp, cool, but clear day in New Hampshire. And, guys, the first hurdle of the weekend was to make your car fast. One lap in qualifying yesterday. Juan Pablo Montoya can check that one off. He did it. But now the big question is, how do you make your car fast and consistent for 300 laps tomorrow?
Well, flat track racing is very hard to set up for, trying to get your car to turn through the middle of the corner and to get to the throttle and get that traction off. I mean, it's really a trade-off both ways, and it's extremely hard to get there. Montoya has gotten that, obviously, by leading both practice sessions and qualifying, but he also leads the other categories as far as 5-lap, 10-lap averages, so he's got it really going on this weekend.
Yeah, and as much as these guys really want to make their cars good in the long run, there's something that they're going to have to pay particular attention to, and that's getting their car up to speed, going really fast, or being able to get the tires hooked up on these restarts. When you get in these double file restarts, if your car won't go at the beginning of those restarts, you could lose 4, 5, maybe even 8 positions, something that you probably can't make up because this is a very difficult racetrack to pass on.
A lot to think about for the other chase contenders. For more, let's go down to the garage area and Dave Burns.
And really, it's a story of two different practice sessions here today at New Hampshire Motor Speedway. This morning, when the guys first started practicing, very cool outside, track temperature 58 degrees, and the cars that had gone out right before them did not have Goodyear tires on, so the feel of the track was very different. The track temperature now hovering around the 80-degree mark, so a track temperature difference. It is warmer now, and maybe all Goodyear rubber in the track right now may make the top of the leaderboard look different in this practice than it did this morning, Doc.
Thank you, David. This track very temperature sensitive up here. Of course, obviously a lot of different weather fluctuations. It is warmer today than it was yesterday. It's supposed to be perfect weather conditions here on Sunday for the race. Here is the top seed, Mark Martin, who qualified 14th yesterday. He was 3rd in the practice session this morning.
Yeah, they were trying to throw some things at this car, and Mark said that everything they were trying didn't seem to really do much, but he does have a good fast car. It was 3rd, like you said, in practice, so, he's not getting it exactly where he wants it, so I'm sure they're trying to find that now.
Yeah, it looks like he's fighting a little bit of a loose condition, and when you're trying to work on that, and that's only going to be magnified right now as that track temperature has gone up and will continue. So that's something they're really going to have to figure out here, try to get some grip from Mark.
The other thing is the track position is so important here. You'll see a lot of these teams working on fuel mileage and really checking that, seeing just how far they can go. They'll try to do that at the end of the race. They'll try to stay out there on that racetrack and keep that track position rather than coming in the pits.
At the other end of the chase, the guy who just got in with a valiant effort the last few weeks, Brian Vickers. His 83 car, he's a chase rookie. He starts 26th here tomorrow.
Here we see David Stremme and Jamie McMurray right in front of him.
That's weird. Montoya's on top so far.
Yeah.
Let's check in on the 83 car. Jamie.
Well, Doc, yesterday the 83 team didn't kick it off the way they wanted to. They had a fuel pressure issue that put them behind the 8-ball. That hurt their qualifying effort. So I talked to Ryan Pemberton just before this practice session started, and he said, we've got a lot of work to do. We think we have the fuel pressure issue cured as of now, but right now we got to work on our speed and getting up to par.
One heroics by this 83 team to be able to get in the chase. We talk about the chase-saving maneuver of changing an axle on pit road at Atlanta. This team has gone to tracks where they have not been very good in the past and not had very good average finishes, and somehow been able to just throw history away and get it done here in 2009.
Looks like they're going to need to do it again. If you look down at the bottom, a 26.3 average for Brian Vickers. He's going to have to definitely pick that up.
And I think you just kind of have to throw that out the window, because this is, especially with Brian Vickers' case, this is a race team that just keeps getting better as they get more time with each other.
And you saw Montoya right above Brian Vickers, an average of 22nd finishing position on 1-mile racetracks. Hard to believe this car that's been this good now could be that poor on a 1-mile track.
Yeah, but you know, I go back to something that makes me think that Brian Patty and Montoya figured something out. Think about how dominant that race car was at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, a flat racetrack. Even though it's 2.5 miles long, a lot of the same characteristics trying to get you through the corner.
A little too tight in the center right there. Good snap on the exits. Remember tire pressures. 10-4.
He's still running faster every lap, too. I mean, he just laid his fastest lap on the board to the last time by. And, man, I'm telling you, this team's going to be hard to beat this weekend.
Dale Jarrett brings up a good point. The last time this team was this good and this dominant in practice was at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, where Juan Montoya led 3 times for 116 laps and then had that heartbreaking speeding penalty on pit road, which cost him maybe, which would have been the biggest win of his career thus far. Here's the 43 car and the 48 car. Reed Sorensen and Jimmy Johnson out there trying to mix it up a little bit. Johnson taking the low line and making the pass.
Yeah, I just read this week Reed Sorensen is racing and driving this car for free, and I just think that's incredible that he's got that much desire and he doesn't have a ride for next year, but he feels like being in the race car is by far the best option for him, even if he's not getting paid.
Yeah, and as a driver, that's what you have to do. You have to keep yourself out there and in front of these other owners and maybe potential owners coming into the sport. Keep them thinking about you and what you can do, and realizing that you're there to drive a race car. And that's what all of these guys, they won't all tell you they all make good money, but they would drive it for nothing because it's so much fun.
I've never had one tell me that.
Well,
I always had to pay them a lot.
You didn't ask. See, yeah.
There's Jimmy Johnson. 3 consecutive championships, and a little wall damage on the right side. A little slight scraping there from that Red Bull Toyota.
Yeah, not much damage, just a little scrape.
And it's hard not to do that every single lap you have that opportunity, because you really run off of turns 2 and 4 right to the wall, and sometimes there's just not quite enough room.
Just a little cosmetic.
They'll just polish up the Red Bull logo there and send him back out of the garage area. We'll do some polishing tomorrow as we come live from New Hampshire Motor Speedway with coverage of the first race in the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup title. 1 o'clock Eastern time on ABC, beginning with NASCAR Countdown. Alan Bestick, Big Brad, Rusty, and all the gang will be on hand to cover the opening shot in this 10-race chase for the title. NHRA action coming your way. The Carolina Nationals qualifying tonight at 11 Eastern time. Finals tomorrow at 7 o'clock, both on ESPN2. How about a little pre-race edition of NASCAR Now, presented by 5 Hour Energy, tomorrow at 10 a.m. Eastern time. We'll set the stage for what should be an exciting afternoon of racing. We'll have live coverage of the race, and then, of course, late tomorrow night at 10 Eastern on ESPN2. We'll wrap up the weekend for NASCAR on NASCAR Now.
A lot of folks weren't sure Tony Stewart was even going to make the chase. Stewart Haas got both team cars into the chase. Ryan Newman getting in it as well.
How about this team right here?
Come on, Bear.
How about stepping up when the pressure's on, getting the job done?
Beautiful job, buddy. All right, boys. Way to get her done.
It's just my championship ride.
One of of the pleasant surprises for 2009, the performance of Stewart Haas Racing. Tony Stewart and Ryan Newman getting both cars in the chase. And you see the performance there, 2nd and 10th the seating. And Tony Stewart, by the way, could become the first owner driver to win a championship since Alan Kowicki back in 1992.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive what he's done so far with not just his team, but also Ryan Newman's team. I mean, they have really been solid. We don't see a win in the column for Ryan Newman yet, but I expect to see one of those or more, and it could start this weekend.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and it's just phenomenal what they've done. The people that they've assembled and made it all happen on the racetrack. So, and I think it all starts with people wanting to come with two good race drivers like Tony Stewart and Ryan Newman. They knew that these guys were going to give them everything that they could give them on the racetrack, and they like working with people like that.
Ryan Newman starts 18th on Sunday. Tony Stewart, by the way, will start on the outside front row. Let's update the Brian Vickers situation where he had scraped the wall in the garage, back in the garage area. Jamie.
Well, Doc, you had a little trouble with some traffic on the track. Now, right rear quarter panel is okay. You see them working on the front of his car. They're replacing the entire splitter. Now, they know that's going to cost a lot of time. And remember, I reported at the top, they needed every minute of this practice because they had an issue in practice yesterday. So this team feverishly working to get Brian Vickers back out.
Brian sitting in the car looking at some of the numbers from the engineers. Let's show you what happened here. Look ahead. We'll watch the 83 car.
Oh, he's completely up out of the groove there.
Yeah, where the inside car was there got loose and forced Brian up out of the groove.
Yeah, he's lucky he didn't get any more damage.
Well, how about the lost time here? We were just talking in commercial a moment ago how important it is. You guys were saying how important it is to be on the track for every single minute of this final session.
Yeah, but sometimes you just have to do what you've got to do. I mean, if they need to change that splitter, they need to do it now so they get time on the racetrack with it, make sure they don't have any problem. Because the worst thing that you can have happen at a flat track like this is have that splitter hitting the ground all day long. That'll kill your day.
And it frees it up in through the center and off. Just having trouble putting down good forward bite on exit every now and then.
Here, Kurt Busch talking about his race car there. The change made him loose in the center and off, so you can just tighten it up a little bit from there, Andy. It'll all be simple.
Well, it sounds simple, but it just isn't. I mean, you go and try to do that, then all of a sudden you got another set of problems entirely. Jamie?
Well, he's in a proven race car, Andy. He's raced it here the last 2 times, finished 6th and 3rd respectively. Now, right before he made those last changes, he said he needed to roll better through the center. So obviously they got him a little too loose, went back out on the track, and he's coming back in for a couple more adjustments. Dave?
And Jamie, over on the other side of the garage, his teammate, David Stremme, was 4th quick in this morning's practice. I had a chance to talk to David briefly about his run this morning, and he said, you know, it was pretty good. I said, are you doing what Kurt is doing or something different? And he goes, we're doing what Kurt is doing, but we didn't start that way. We started the way that I thought. We ran decent here, but when we went to Kurt's setup, it was great. And he said, since then, we started sharing information back and forth. So Stremme's been able to give a little bit back after they began tweaking on the setup that the two gave them.
Stremme qualified 6th, and as you said, Dave, ran 4th in that first session. So here's a driver looking for a ride, really motivated to be able to do the best he can to show off on the racetrack.
Yeah, along with that, it'd be very important for Kurt Busch to have teammates like David Stremme that gets your setup close and then try some things from there that may help you along the way.
Here's a driver who doesn't have any teammates in the chase this year. Surprisingly, only one Joe Gibbs racing car in, but it is a good one, and he is the guy with the momentum. Talking about Denny Hamlin.
Yeah, he's got the momentum, and this is his kind of racetrack, too. So you expect him to be extremely good tomorrow, getting a good start in this chase.
Denny's always been pretty good on flat racetracks. DJ, what is it about a driver that some guys are just really just natural and very comfortable on tracks that have very little banking?
Well, I think you look at your really good short track racers and guys that were able to knew what they wanted in their car, what they needed to feel. And Denny is a driver that doesn't use a lot of brake. He might not totally charge the corner, but these cars, it's important to keep them rolling. And Mike Ford says Denny Hamlin's really good at that.
I think you've hit on something really important right there, Dale, talking about the brakes. I think that's the whole thing with flat track racing, because you have to slow down. You've got to use the brakes to get into the corners and get your car slowed down. I think Denny Hamlin does a good job of getting off the brake. I think he does a good job of getting his car slowed down, and before he gets to the corner, he is off the brake and letting the car roll, and that's how you make time on flat corners.
Remember, as a rookie, he won both races at Pocono, where there's essentially a flat racetrack, high-speed track where you got to be able to get through those corners in a hurry. Now, we talked about he doesn't have a teammate in the chase. He does have a teammate, a couple of teammates on the racetrack, and here is Kyle Busch, who just missed the chase last week at Richmond by 8 points.
Yeah, it was very disappointing for that team, and M&M's, I know they were all very hopeful he'd make it, but you know, this year he didn't do it, but he's still got 10 races to win a bunch of races and get ready for next year.
Yeah, and he'll be a factor in a number of these races, but this is a great opportunity if these guys look at it like that. I know they want to battle for a championship. That's what they set out to do, but these are exactly the type of racetracks that they've struggled at for 2 years, and even though they've been very good at some other places, they can take this time to really work on that type of setup for these cars.
Now, here's the one car, a little bit different paint job for Martin Truex Jr., and he is right now second quickest in this session. And by the way, he's also the teammate to our pole sitter, Juan Pablo Montoya.
Yeah, they've taken up right where they left off in the first practice this morning, 1 and 2. Like you say, Dale, I believe they're sharing some notes, and they've got something here.
Yeah, I guarantee you, if I would have seen my teammate be that fast yesterday, I would have had exactly what he had in there. But, I got to think that Brian Patty's maybe found something. He's a really good shot guy, Andy, and I think that's very important on these flat racetracks, and I believe he's come up on something.
Yeah, holding that platform, trying to keep the car flat and keep it turning and keep it tight coming off the corner. That's all important, and I think Brian Patty is very good at that.
And here's one of the pleasant surprises of the day. Third quickest in this session is the 88 car of Dale Earnhardt Jr. He did not make the chase, but DJ, you were talking about how teams need to use these final races to be able to get sorted out for next year. Here's a team that's got a long way to go.
Yeah, they do, but they're making improvements. We ride along with Dale Jr. here down the front straightaway. They have an opportunity here. We can watch his telemetry here. He's about 9,500 RPMs getting down into turn 1. You see, get off the brake and let the car roll. Trying to get back to the throttle here, and you want to get back to wide open as soon as you possibly can, but you really have to work the throttle here. But Dale Jr., I listened to his scanned him some in that first practice session, and he was very descriptive as what he was looking for with this race car, what it was doing. So I think that feedback has certainly helped them.
Last fall, Dale Earnhardt Jr. started 4th, finished 5th, and led 79 laps. This was a very good racetrack for him and this team. We'll see if that can happen again here on Sunday. Final practice session coverage ongoing here at his happy hour for the NASCAR Sprint Cup cars. Juan Pablo Montoya is our pole sitter, and he's atop the speed charts here in this final session. Montoya, Truex, Earnhardt Jr., Kurt Busch, and Jimmy Johnson. We invite you to join us for live coverage. The first race in the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup comes your way from New Hampshire Motor Speedway Sunday, 1 o'clock Eastern Time, live on ABC, beginning with NASCAR Countdown, hosted by Alan Bestwick. Now, 1 year ago, it was the boys from Roush Fenway that got it done, finishing 1st and 2nd here at New Hampshire.
99 Carl Edwards talking about a cat that won 9 races last year.
Teammates racing hard. Biffle was like shot out of a cannon.
Good job, boys.
It's just my so-called, just my championship ride.
We'll win the championship now.
Good, smart driving.
What a difference a year makes for the Roush Fenway drivers. A year ago, Carl Edwards had 6 wins and was looking to become the winningest driver on the season. Finished just shy of a championship, 69 points back at Jimmy Johnson. And this year, well, Edwards has not gone to victory lane. He is on the racetrack, and although he qualified well and starts this race 5th, he has struggled in both the morning session and in this one here right now.
Yeah, I guess the surprising thing is, how did he qualify 5th? he's not been good really all weekend, but his qualifying lap was stellar.
I think he's a little surprised yesterday, too, at that 5th place qualifying effort, because they weren't very good in the practice yesterday. So he got into one good lap when he needed it.
Teammate Greg Biffle now back in the garage area. Biffle, we mentioned, was winless this year, was winless a year ago coming into New Hampshire, and won the race here, and also won the next week at Dover, Delaware.
I'm telling you, Biffle's confident that he can do that again. He says, man, he said, we've run good at New Hampshire the last few times. Of course, they won here last fall, went on to win Dover. He feels like that he can duplicate that feat.
It just is shocking to me that Carl Edwards can be so good in the Nationwide car and so good last year in the Cup car, and this year we are entering the chase and he has yet to go to victory lane. In fact, Roush Fenway hasn't been to victory lane in the last 24 consecutive Cup races, and as proud as Jack Roush is, that's got to be surprising even to them.
Yeah, but I think each of these guys will tell you they've fallen a little bit behind with this car. You know, they had things really good. They didn't see that there's that many directions they could go. Some other people have found things and put them kind of behind the 8 ball for right now. Jamie?
Well, this 99 team's really been struggling this week, and they started off yesterday 35th in practice. They were 23rd in this morning's practice. But after qualifying yesterday, Carl really gave kudos to the 16 team and said, we've been relying on them, using their setup, using their input to try to get better. And Carl just pulled out of the garage, and the team told me he's just struggling with tight in the center, and they can't seem to fix it right now.
You know, if you can't fix that and make your car roll through the center here, Andy, you're going to have a lot of problems, because if you're loose in and loose on the exit and you're just tight in the middle, then you're only going to compound that problem.
Yeah, that's why it's so hard. These flat tracks are so frustrating. And like you say, if you can't roll the center of the corner, you really can't work on the car. You've got to fix that problem first and then start working on the other parts, the entry and the exit.
One of the Dodges in the chase here is the 9 car of Casey Kane, making his second chase in his career. He doesn't have a win here, has one top 5 finish, 4th coming in the fall of 2004. Now, a lot of discussion this week about what's happening with this team given the merger that was announced a week ago, that this team will be going away from Dodge and to Ford in 2010. And this is what Casey Kane had to say in his press conference.
I don't really know who it is either. So, you know, it's just, I don't know. It's just, there's not a lot of answers out there right now. I don't know if it's because we're in the middle of a lot of things, or if we just don't have a person in that position. I think Robbie Loomis is supposedly going to be that guy, but I don't think he is yet. So is it Foster, but you can't get anything out of Foster. So it's hard to say, you know, who that is. And I think it's because we're in a lot of different things right now. But I just feel so confident and so comfortable with Kenny and with the team that he has surrounding him and has surrounding us. And if I didn't have that, I'd be a mess. I wouldn't know what to think.
Now this week, the Vice President and Managing Director of Competition, Mark McCardle, and Richard Petty Motorsports parted ways, and that was one of the discussions about leadership, and still sort of a big state of flux over here with this organization.
Well, I might step on some toes and make some people mad, but it wouldn't be the first time. But I'm going to tell you what I've heard and what I know about this situation a lot. You have people over here at this organization trying to make racing decisions that are business people that maybe are really good in other areas, but the racing side of it is not their expertise. And Casey and Elliott and AJ and these guys are all very concerned about the direction and who is in charge and getting the things done that they feel like they need on the racetrack.
Well, I feel like the 9 team is going to be okay. I think trying to go for the championship is going to be difficult, but being in the chase, their performance is there. They're pretty good week in and week out. And he just said he feels comfortable with his crew chief Kenny Francis, so they'll be okay. The real problem is going to be with the other teams that are not quite up to par, and how do they get there? They need that leadership at the top to be able to get a direction to start fixing some of the problems they have with their other team.
Yeah, you said the one thing. Kenny Francis is the saving grace over there. I mean, Robbie Loomis is great if he's able to be in the position that he needs to be, but Kenny Francis is the glue that's holding this together right now, along with the great talent there in Casey Kane.
Let's update the performance on the racetrack of this 9 car. Dave.
As they started this morning's session, the biggest complaint that driver had was that he had no rear grip. And so they went to work on the car after 8 laps on track, spent about 10 or 12 minutes in the garage area, moving the truck arms and things around in the back of this car to try to give Casey more rear grip. So he lost a lot of track time, but it was a big adjustment he felt he needed to try to get this car in the racetrack.
Casey Kane will come on to pit road, and they will try to get him dialed in. Boy, how special would it be for this operation and Richard Petty Motorsports if they could possibly get a chance to be on that stage as a champion when this year is done. Back in New Hampshire, coverage of Happy Hour final practice session for the NASCAR Sprint Cup cars. Here's the 83 car of Brian Vickers has now come out of the garage area after changing that splitter.
Yeah, he's not missed too much track time. If you look at the board, he's got about 26 laps on the board, and so they're getting done what they need to do, even though they did take a little time to change that splitter.
It's important, Andy, to when you make changes, just as you pointed out earlier, when you have big changes you need to make that could really affect your performance tomorrow, you need to take that time, even though you might lose a few minutes. And it seems to be paying off. Brian's running some pretty good laps out here.
Vickers trying to get up to speed, and here's a guy that has the speed and has climbed out of his car and doing a little discussion there. Juan Pablo Montoya and Brian Patty. Jamie.
And Juan Pablo Montoya, it's interesting. He comes in for wholesale changes and he gets out of his car, unlike most of the drivers. He's talking to Brian Patty right now. He said the brakes are chattering and that they opened him up a little too much. Maybe Andy can elaborate on that a bit. But so far he's good with the car and they're making it better, Dave.
Over in the 5 garage of top seed Mark Martin as they work on this race car. Hasn't been bad as far as speed goes, but Mark has described it as a little bit of a moving target. Nothing they have done in the small change area has really made the car a lot better. And Alan Gustafson told me that would probably be the case during this practice. He said little changes will make just a little bit of a difference, especially turning in the center of the corner, which is their biggest concern. And the guy who hits that right here is going to win the race. Guys?
No doubt about it, Dave, and certainly they are dialing in how Alan Gustafson has been so good for Mark Martin this year. Now, a moment ago, you heard Jamie Little talking about Juan Pablo complaining they may have pulled the brakes back a little too far. What are they talking about, Andy?
Well, they're talking about the opening in the grill. They opened it up to put a little more air on the brakes. And one thing that you have happen here, especially at a track like this, it's a short track, but it has long straightaways. The brakes get really hot when you push the pedal down, and then you got that long cooling time. Well, that heat cycle, it gets so hot and so cold that it can warp the rotors, and so it's sometimes better to keep the rotor just a little warmer. In other words, don't open quite as much air on those things, on the ducts, and let the overall temperature be a little higher, and that'll smooth that chattering out. And that's what they're talking about right there.
And as a driver, man, that is so aggravating to have that chattering sensation going in the corner, because you don't know which way the car is going to go when it starts doing it, and it starts bouncing up down, and you can't give good feedback.
Here's Jeff Gordon, the 4-time champ. Jeff, a 2-time winner at this racetrack. He is the 6th seed because he only has the 1 victory. Oh, a little smoke out of the back of that car.
Yeah, he charged the corner a little bit, and the splitter got on the ground and kind of unloads those front tires. That's why you see that tire smoke, and some of that is splitter smoke as well.
Yeah, we'll ride along with Jeff here and see how hard he's having to work through the corners. Down into turn 3 right now. See, as he gets to the middle, not a lot of wheel put in the car. That means it's turning pretty well. Having to go back to the right, a little bit loose right there.
Yeah, that's a good shot. A crew chief loves to see that right there. And when he says, hey, I'm a little bit snug in the middle, you see how he's turning the wheel, and then I'm loose off. You can see him turn to the right, chasing the back end, coming off the corner.
What does this racetrack do through the course of a race? You talk about guys being loose coming off. Does the track tighten up over the hours of the afternoon?
That's generally the direction that this goes. As you get more rubber down, this track will get tighter as we go throughout the day, and that's what the drivers will face. So you want to really be careful. But the one thing that they fight is there's races here this afternoon that will be difficult for them to overcome because it's a different type of rubber. So your race car at the first of the race tomorrow is going to be totally different than what you're going to see about 50 to 60 laps into that race.
Yeah, and after about 50, 60 laps, the track does kind of settle down. And one thing we've seen with this car in particular is that if you start out loose, it's almost impossible to get it tightened up. So even if the track does tighten up. So it's just one of those things that's kind of with this car. It's not, just this is the way it's going to be. It's not just going to get tighter. Sometimes it'll get looser.
Now, here is the feel-good story of the weekend, at least in my book, and that is Bobby Labonte, the 2000 Cup champion, jumping in an underfunded Chevrolet owned by Kevin Buckler and qualifying his best qualifying effort of the year, 8th.
That's a good story, man. I'm telling you. And Bobby Labonte, it just shows you what a good race car driver he is.
Yeah, he really needs a good opportunity here to showcase his talents again as we get back out with Jimmy Johnson here.
Let's update the 48, the champ, Dave.
And Andy, what were you saying about when these cars get a little loose? They're what?
Well, they're
really tough to fix.
They're tough, man. It's hard to fix that.
That was the thing that got Jimmy Johnson yesterday in qualifying. He will start on the outside of row 8 for tomorrow's race. Just a little too loose in that situation in qualifying. As for this practice, they started with a long run at the beginning of practice, a 20-lap run, just to see how the car would react. That was okay, and then they went to tweaking it, just to fine-tune it a little bit. The run before, he's pulling.
New Hampshire Motor Speedway coverage of Happy Hour. Final practice session as we are set for Sunday's race number 1 in the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup. Show you where the chase drivers who are seated 1st through 12th are practicing here in the final session. You see Mark Martin is 7th. Look at Tony Stewart way back in 23rd position. What's going on with Smoke, Dave?
Actually, most recently, Doc, they've gotten a lot happier about this race car. Early on in the day, the car was actually chattering the rear end. That's a loose condition that Tony was describing to his crew. So they changed the crossweight on that car to try to help that, and I got a thumbs up from the crew on that helping. Just a minute ago, I checked with them again, and they say, and I think it's more of an average versus a quick time versus quick time, but they say they picked up about 4/10 during this practice session. So as they look at what they're doing with the 14 car, they're really pleased right now.
Well, they have moved from the mid-30s over to the mid-20s now, so they are better than they were. So I think that's why they're optimistic.
Yeah, and it's really hard, Andy. We've noted this a number of times. If you don't lay down that fast lap at the first part of practice, it's really hard to come back and make that number better, but they've obviously done that.
Tony qualified on the outside front row, where he will start beside Juan Pablo Montoya. Now, here's the 77 car of Sam Hornish. Sam has 3 starts here, has 1 top 10 finish, that coming in June when he finished 8th here in New Hampshire. 2 top 5 finishes this year for Hornish, 4th at Pocono and 5th at Michigan. Dave.
And Doc, I hear DJ and Andy wondering aloud, I wonder if he's doing the same thing that Kurt Busch and teammate David Stremme are doing. I did check with Sam on that earlier today. He told me that, no, we're doing our own thing. I liked it that way in June. They had a top 10 finish, strategizing their way to that. And he said, we're still working on it here, but I like the way that we have it set up versus what they have.
Well, the Penske organization as a whole has really been on the upswing lately, and you see that with the 77 and Kurt Busch also, and even David Stremme. I mean, he's been up in the top 15 just about every practice session, and you know, he's racing for a job, but he's doing a good job right now.
Yeah, I'd have to look at that Kurt Busch setup, though, in particular. He's up there 2nd on the chart, finished 2nd last week. He's in the chase, so I'd have to take a look at that, if nothing else, and maybe give it a try and see if Sam might like that.
It's good to run 1 quick lap, but really important to be good over averages, and this is a 5-lap average of those in happy hour. And you see that Montoya top of the list, Kevin Harvick, this team, RCR team, really responding now. But look down in 8th spot, A.J. Allmendinger. Very consistent there in the top 10 in terms of speed.
And that's what you see now of that team lately. They just hang around there, right around that top 10, top 15, and have really had a good, last few races. Looks like he's going to have another one Sunday.
He's the only driver this year that's run all the races that's yet to lead a lap, and he has come so close about 3 or 4 different times of taking the lead, or at least leading one under caution, but doesn't reflect on how well this team has run and how far he has come in just a year.
You see a name on the hood of that car, Berlin City Auto Group, and saw that on Berlin City on the side of Dave Dion's race cars for years and years. So bringing back a name from the past, that might get a lot of you fans that don't know what I'm talking about, but Dave Dion was a great driver
from New England up here.
Yeah, right, and came down south quite a bit. He ran at Hickory Speedway when my dad was promoting there.
He'd bring his Ford down inside of an old converted school bus and drive it all the way to the south and spank those guys on the short tracks. Talking about some of the great drivers from the Northeast, how about this kid from New England, Joey Logano? He said this week that he came here at the age of 5 with his dad and watched a race, sat in the stands, whatever, and he picked the exact seat he sat in on that day when Mark Martin sat on the pole and Jeff Gordon won the race, and now he's racing against those guys.
That's a dream come true for this kid, and he does, he's so deserving. He does such a great job behind the wheel, on and off the track. He's a good kid.
Became the youngest winner in NASCAR Sprint Cup history here back in June at the age of 19 years, 1 month and 4 days. On a race that where he really wasn't that much of a factor, but a great pit call to keep him out, and then the rains came, and they were the ones celebrating.
But it got them on a different strategy in that race, and I think that's what's going to be so interesting about tomorrow. We talk about this being a short race, and you might not have to come to pit road a lot of times, but if you can get yourself on a little different strategy, and some of these chase guys might decide to do that, and others that aren't in the chase may kind of upset the apple cart and throw that in there. So it's going to be fun to watch.
He grew up 3 hours from this racetrack, and this was the first track he ever came and watched the NASCAR Sprint Cup Series. And back in June, he realized a dream because of the pit strategy and some help with the weatherman. Joey Logano went to victory lane for his very first ever Cup Series win. Happy hour coverage continuing here at New Hampshire, and there is the #1 seed in the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup, Mark Martin, and it has already been a memorable year for this 50-year-old driver.
The best car is running out front right now.
Mark wins. Can't believe it. Tell me we won, right?
It's just my championship. It's just my championship.
And that is a beautiful sight for Mark Martin.
Mark, you didn't win. You crushed it, baby.
Championship ride.
Mark Martin, #1 seed in the chase, and what a story for the 50-year-old driver. And we apologize, I did yesterday for calling him 50. He said, Doc, it's part of the story, and I'm proud of it. So there's the numbers for Mark a year ago with a limited schedule, and this year he said he wanted to come out of retirement, and Rick Hendrick said, I just want to get you a win. And once he won a race, Mark Martin said, guys, if I can put us in the chase, it'll be icing on the cake. Well, now he is in the chase, and he told his team over the weekend after getting in the chase at Richmond, he said, guys, now let's go for the cake. So Mark Martin will be a factor, gotta believe, in this 10-race chase for the championship. Big time.
He must be having a lot of fun because he signed up for another year on to 2011 now. So
Yeah, he is having a lot of fun. He's having a lot of fun in this practice. He's actually moved up to 4th quickest, and that's kind of hard to do in the middle of a practice to actually move up late after they've gone out in that first wave. But we've seen Mark Martin do it. We've seen quite a few cars do it. This is one of the tracks, very few tracks you can see that happen on.
Martin now 4th overall on the speed charts. And what about his teammate Jimmy Johnson on the racetrack? Johnson right now being shown 7th in this final session. Dave.
Doc, Jimmy Johnson came into the pits, 4 tires, full of fuel, no changes. And it only took 5 minutes because they wanted to get down to the end of practice here. Car balanced where they wanted it, and they just wanted to see what it would do full of fuel and with fresh rubber on the car. So they made basically no changes and sent it back out.
Well, that's a good thing to do right there. When you feel like you got a good car, you've made a lot of changes, you've gone through a series of things, and then what you want to do is put a set of tires on it, fill up the fuel, and say, okay, this is what we've got tomorrow. When we go back to a restart, how's this thing going to act? That's the way to do it. Just come in and make no changes, put 4 tires on, and go out there and see what you got.
yeah, the good thing is if it acts the way that you anticipate that it's going to, that's good. But when it doesn't act like that, then do you blame the tires or do you start going back on adjustments?
Well, that's a good one. We'll come back and talk about it for sure.
Well, the fastest lap of this session and the most consistent speed in this session, both of those awards go to that 42 car, Juan Pablo Montoya.
These guys have certainly stepped their game up here as we've gotten closer to the chase, and now that he's actually in it, they seem to be set on go.
He's got 25 total laps in this practice session, and his fastest lap was on the 5th lap of that. Mark Martin, on the other hand, has 43 laps total, and his fast lap came on lap 29. So we'll see what Montoya can do here and see if he can actually improve his lap time from earlier.
As we watch Montoya go around, the one thing I've noticed with his race car is he's not, we talk about these guys using up a lot of the racetrack on the exit of the corner. He's able to really keep his car down and not really challenge that wall. So his car's turning really good, and he's got good grip off the corner.
Here is the 2 car of Kurt Busch, right now being shown as 2nd on in this final session. Now, the word we're hearing this week is that we mentioned last week that Pat Tryson, the crew chief, announced he would not be back at the end of the year. We'll be moving on to the 56 team for Michael Waltrip Racing, the Toyota team, which will be Martin Truex Jr. Now, we are being told that Pat Tryson is not in the race shop during the week because this Dodge team is working on stuff for 2010 and 2011. They don't want him to see, but he is being asked to come to the racetrack and basically run the operation as a crew chief on race weekend.
I've been in this situation at Childress's the last year I was there. We were in a championship battle with Jeff Gordon, and I made the decision I was going to leave the next year. And the last couple of months of the season, it was I stayed in the shop, but I'll tell you, it was a big divide in there, and it was the team trying to get ready for next year. You try to balance that with trying to win the championship in the current season. So I can understand where they're coming from, but I'm not sure that's the right way to keep the crew chief out of the shop if you're going to try to win this championship. Jamie?
Well, Andy, I was just able to confirm that Pat Tryson, the crew chief for Kurt Busch, was told on Wednesday he is not allowed to come to the shop. Now, the reason he's at the racetrack is because his driver, Kurt Busch, wants him calling the races throughout this chase. So there you have it, Doc.
I can't figure that one out, but maybe they could just have him stay in a part of the shop. But he needs to be there as a leader of this team on weekends and trying to get that Blue Deuce into the championship here in 09. We'll cover it all for you beginning at 1 o'clock Eastern time on Sunday. NASCAR Sprint Cup Series race number 1 in the chase on ABC, beginning with NASCAR Countdown. You like drag racing? We got some NHRA action coming your way. The Carolinas Nationals qualifying coming at 11 Eastern time, and the finals tomorrow at 7 Eastern time on ESPN2. NASCAR Now pre-race edition. We will set the stage for the chase presented by 5 Hour Energy tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. Eastern, and we'll wrap up the weekend and tell you how it happened and why it happened here at New Hampshire. NASCAR Now, 10 Eastern time tomorrow night. How important is track time at New Hampshire? Well, there are just a few minutes left in happy hour, and we've got 29 cars still on the racetrack searching and trying to dial it in for Sunday afternoon. One of those is the 5 car of Mark Martin. Dave Burns.
And Doc, I wanted you to get Mark's assessment of his car at this point in practice. Here's his radio.
All I care about is the lap times. You know, I don't care how it's driving. You know, if there was issues, bad, I'd tell you, but I'm not that good here, so I don't know what perfect would be for where we're at. Yeah, 10-4, that was pretty encouraging. I mean, that was pretty good. We'll see what these other guys do.
Yeah, so don't get Mark wrong. They're not out to lunch or anything like that, but he's not quite sure he knows exactly what perfect is here. DJ, can you relate to that?
Yeah, I can. And Jeff Gordon brought up a funny story the other day in New York talking about Mark. Said every time, and apparently he's going to come into this meeting this afternoon too, when they have their team meeting, and say, man, my car's just not that good. I can't get around this place. I don't know what it takes here. He said, of course, then he goes out and wears us out. He said only one time all year has Mark come in and said, man, is my car good? He said that was at Chicago, and he spanked us. He said if Mark Martin ever comes in and says his car's good, I'm changing my car over to whatever he's got.
Yeah, Mark led 195 laps at Chicago, so when Mark thinks he's even close to being good, you better watch out. Dale Earnhardt Jr. also on the racetrack here trying to get up to speed, and not bad here in this session. Let's listen in.
From 55 to exit?
Yeah, it gets into the center so great with this change in the front. It's awesome. But in the gas, from the 55 to exit in the gas, I got a little more wheel in it. I shouldn't be taking this big arc on exit. I should at some point be straightening up sooner. I'm driving the car basically all the way out to the wall with this big arc on exit.
Yeah, that's really, really good information right there that he's given there. What he's saying is he can't get the car aimed right, and so you back that up and say, okay, what we need to do is make this car turn better in the center of the corner, so he's actually looking at a different arc coming off, and he doesn't have to put the wheel in and keep turning as you're coming off the corner.
And what that's going to be difficult for him to do, the reason he wants to fix that is it's going to make it difficult to pass somebody. If he's on the inside and he needs all of that room, he can't get his car to turn, he's going to have to come out of the throttle, and going to make it difficult to make that pass. But really good information by Junior there.
The 11 car, Denny Hamlin, last week's winner, trying to get the final minutes of this session used to his benefit. He is 7th right now on the speed chart. Again, it's Montoya atop the charts, who's the pole sitter. Kurt Busch, who's still on the racetrack. Martin Truex, Martin, Johnson, Earnhardt Jr., and now Hamlin.
Yeah, you're right, Doc. 25-plus cars still on the racetrack here in the last minute of practice, so everybody's still looking for that perfect setup.
Less than a minute to go here in the final practice session. Guys, your thoughts on what we've seen here in happy hour?
Well, Montoya is still the man to beat, no doubt. He's still throwing it down on him. He's led every practice session and qualifying as well. So looks like he's got it well in hand, although these other cars are starting to catch up to him a little bit.
Yeah, I think we see Mark Martin and Jimmy Johnson getting their cars dialed in. Could be a good day for Dale Jr., so this team seems to be on the upswing.
What about this guy? Juan Pablo Montoya, new track record. He's the pole sitter. He will turn 34 on Sunday as he makes his 100th career start. Could he get his first win on an oval track as a member of the chase for the NASCAR Sprint Cup? Our live coverage coming your way at 1 o'clock Eastern time, Sunday afternoon on ABC. Coming up next, ESPN2's college football prime time. The Mountaineers of West Virginia against the Tigers of Auburn. So long from New Hampshire.